Welcome to the NCEAD Emerging Markets Podcast, GCC edition. I'm your host, Nick Lal, and this is a special series coming out of the NCEAD Emerging Markets Podcast focused on one of the most exciting regions in the emerging world right now. And I am here today with our guest, Amr Habis. Amr is a transformational leader with a background spanning engineering, project management, and business strategy. He's held pivotal roles at organizations like Aramco, OEM Group, and the Saudi National Guard, where he's gained deep insights into leadership, organizational change, and human dynamics. He's been especially instrumental in Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030, which is part of what is driving this podcast and is really what's making Saudi Arabia one of the most exciting places to be on earth right now. I'm really thrilled to have the opportunity to get an inside look from him on not only all of the exciting infrastructure development, which I know a lot of you are probably a little bit familiar with, but we're also really excited to learn more about how Vision 2030 is impacting culture and daily life of people in Saudi Arabia. So I was thinking to start out just so the listeners could get a feel for who you are and why your expertise here is so important. I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about your life up until now and how you got involved with the work that you are currently doing.
Well, firstly, let me thank you, Nick, for letting me be with you here. And I'm so privileged. And I really look forward that both of us, we come up with constructive content. And that is the motto here in Saudi Arabia today. So basically, I come from diversified sectors. I started as an engineer, then I moved into a little bit adjacent sector where I went to the National Guards and I worked for several construction projects. Then I found myself demanding for more. I found myself into the oil and gas industry, and I spent a couple of years there, then again and again and again. And I finally, in the pursuit of my dream, I found myself as an entrepreneur a couple of years ago. And I think I'm super relaxed spiritually, but mentally quite busy. But I think that is what makes me happy and fueled up.
I can definitely get that vibe from you. Very happy, energetic, excited person. Is this something you knew you were going to do from the time you were a child? What was your vision for Saudi Arabia when you were young, and how's it changed as you've grown?
Well, quite honestly, let me cite one example that happened a couple of weeks ago. I was just walking down the street and had this glimpse of the future of how this place may look like. And I was captivated of the amount of changes or transformations happening. And quite honestly, the vision benefited us in that sense, actually in two main aspects. And let me be a little bit of an engineer here. So the vision is taking place actually at a hardware and at a software level. And when we speak about the hardware level, it's vividly visible that now we are redefining how a modern and a future city, urban city, is going to look like in the foreseeable future. I'm talking here about NEOM city in the northern part of Saudi Arabia. And that is one of the hardware transformation that we are experiencing. The Metro, Riyadh Metro, the largest metro project in the globe, in the history, has been finally launched. And proudly, I was part of this at the very beginning. And those kind of the hardware elements or the hardware transformation aspects. But when it comes most importantly about the software, and actually, as you know, the system itself, I mean, the country or the workplace or even the family or the community is kind of ongoing and continual interchange of cultures between the elements and the system. And that is, I think, is the magnificent impact that we are experiencing in the sense of being more opening up to the world, more respectful to who we are, as Saudis at origin basis, demonstrating or enjoying the cultural elements that define who we are. And I think these are the two aspects that kind of really observed and reached into the surface. I think we have so many examples and so many challenges about this element, the cultural element. One of the examples, it happened with just a couple of friends of mine. We were discussing how people are going to be acceptant to the metro and are they going to use it? Or it's going to just be left over for some other people who are really in need. But the result was compound multiple times of my expectations and of the bit I used to challenge about. So I think that is a big indicator of where we're heading as a country, as a community.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think most of us are probably familiar that there are just massive changes in the built environment happening right now in Saudi. I mean, 6 new metro lines over the course of just a few years. I don't think that's ever happened anywhere else in the world. So
Oh, yeah.
that's really exciting. But of course, it impacts the people who live in the place and the way they live their lives. And talking to you earlier, you were telling me that it wasn't clear whether or not people would actually use it, but now you go there and you see that it is packed with people. So it's very exciting. I know in your work, you've talked a lot about that culture is transforming so quickly in Saudi right now. And there's this concept of new unknowns that you've talked about. I was wondering if you could expand on what you mean by new unknowns and what you're seeing with the people there, how they're living their life differently and how they are adapting to the changes.
Well, quite honestly, if we just cite one example of how people used to live, you just study, then you go to work, and then you retire. And through that model, the amount of unknowns is really minimal. And I think that is against the nature of the new generation, the Z generation, and even the millennial. A lot of transformational and demanding nations or generations are coming up. So the favorism towards those unknowns is becoming a little bit narrowed into, I don't want to live that typical life. And you can see this throughout the people you meet, especially the younger ones. And now I think the favorism is toward the more unknowns. People are in favor of, I don't know what tomorrow may look like. And they are enjoying this agony. And it's a paradoxical because sometimes you have obligations, financial ones, family related obligations, etc. But I think people have just realized how enjoyable being in the unknown spectrum. And that is the nature of the project itself. So again, what is happening at a physical aspect in the country is projected on who we are at a software level. So one example, 10 years ago, if you walked into a ministry, there are a few phrases and verbs you will hear. Okay. And we used to know those. Now, if you want to walk into a ministry, you will see an extreme radical change of how we were 10 years ago compared to what we are today. And the youngsters are looking for more challenging jobs that they lead themselves. So I think if I want to call it or give it a motto, it's the rebellion eras. People, they just want to do what they want to do. They just want to live the way they want to live. And they don't care about the financial consequences, the stability consequences, etc. And I think that is a major definer of who we are today.
It's super interesting that it is impacting life choices that are that big so quickly. I was wondering if you could talk about how these changes are impacting existing business owners and also maybe the career choices that the younger generation might be making because of these different preferences.
Well, there is a concept that we developed. It's called the GCP. It's a good citizen participation paradox. And let me just delve into that. We are citizens. We are demanding that we want to have the best lifestyle ever. We want everything goes as smooth as possible in the sense of we know the regulations. We know what, for example, a customer who walks into my company, what sort of services or product I may provide. But to reach that level of maturity, there should be a tweak and a radical transformation at regulation level. And these regulators define how the business may establish, how the business operates as well. And that is by itself, it's a promising day, but at the same time, it's a sort of a challenge. And when we say GCP, we mean we as good citizens, we need to participate heavily by, first of all, being acceptant of the transformations and changes, the periodical ones that is taking place for a better tomorrow. So we need to let go of the paradox that I need to be at a higher lifestyle position, but I need to adopt into more participation. And as I mentioned, the participation starts with being acceptant with what's happening at a country level. And at the beginning, business owners didn't comprehend, especially the SMEs, did not comprehend the necessity of these changes for them to perform better. But eventually, people start adopting to this new reality.
Definitely, yeah. I think that it must be so difficult to implement these changes at an individual level across a whole society, especially if someone's used to be doing business a certain way for so long and things change so quickly. So it must be very interesting to see that and also see how people are adapting to the changes. When it comes to GCCP, I know you've also spoken about other benchmarks that Saudi Arabia is trying to meet, whether it's the government or businesses there, and that Saudi Arabia shouldn't be judged by the same benchmarks as other countries. I was wondering if you could expand on that a little bit and explain how Saudi is unique, the culture there, and also why that leads to different benchmarks.
That is a really good one, because now at the end of every year, we want to just travel and see the world. I think this is happening almost to everyone. So the beauty that emerges of seeing the others is actually emerged through seeing something different. So the difference is kind of a beauty. And from that sense, if we benchmark a country, for example, Miami Beach, if you want to have a replicated Miami Beach in Jeddah Shore, for example, it's impossible to have it as is because of the cultural elements and the differences as well. So if you walk down Jeddah Beach today, it's going to be lovely. It's going to be a little bit similar to the Miami one, but with our own themes. Okay. So similarly speaking, if you want to get into a new business where you are under the necessity of doing a heavily benchmarked against a developed country or a country that reached out several miles in that aspect, you have to pay attention to who you are, and you have to pay attention to who they are and what sort of cultural gaps are there. So these cultural gaps, if they are not well defined, we're going to end up of a reality gap. Another example, I want to have the regulations of the women football national team. It's impossible to have it as is from a respected foreign country and just replicated or projected as is in a Saudi contest. So that's going to show a huge difference in color, in size, in flavor, in everything. So the idea is to just adopt to Geert Hofstede, and I like always to remind myself of the cultural dimensions where, for example, we have a high index of collectivism against, for example, extremely high index of individualism in US. If we factor in these realities, then we can bridge the reality gap and we can benchmark appropriately. Other than this, we're going to spend time, we're going to spend efforts, and we'll go back to the beginning where nothing will happen because we're just simply different.
Absolutely. I mean, I just got to say, as an American, I probably wouldn't fly 12 plus hours all the way to Saudi Arabia just to see another Miami Beach. I'd want to see something unique and different. And I think,
well, I have to invite you for that. Well, I have to invite you just to come, and we spend a few days and we just go across so many beautiful heritage places in Saudi Arabia, especially the one that resembles the extreme contrast. For example, if you go to a place here in Riyadh called Bijeri, it's the old city of Riyadh. And you will see a beautiful contrast. You will see clay, which is extremely old. And then all of a sudden you start seeing glasses, okay, and extremely modern setup. And that contrast is something really beautiful. You just can see with those old writers like Alexander Key and those, the ones who just wrote 100 years ago, of how they perceive the future, and you will see that a clay, very old foundations, but all of a sudden you see the extreme modernism all at once. So that is a promise. I'm going to invite you very soon.
amazing. Well, definitely would love to be there and see all these places with you. And I really like that you're preserving the culture as well, though, because I think in places where development hasn't worked as well, they've just completely gotten rid of what was originally there and replaced it. And the new things don't always last and aren't as significant as what was there. But then also being able to see how modern and exciting the country is and that you are growing so quickly is also beautiful as well. I know in your own work, you're helping a lot of leaders in the region navigate all these changes. I was wondering if you could talk about that, if you have any exciting examples of ways that you have helped leaders in different domains in Saudi adapt to the new normal there.
Yeah, actually, we have so many examples of how we, again, the GCP, good citizen participation, not necessarily comes through value exchange, but once you implanted something, I think that is the value that we're looking for. So many of the strategy development projects that we come across, all the leaders are under the impression that we just need to have a blueprint book and we have to have the manuals, etc. And their focus is marshaled towards one sort of development aspect. But when we start the project and we stress on the cultural element, and most importantly, we call it the foundational development, where we just shift the mindset. One of the examples, a company called Levels, it's a construction contracting company. It's based in Jeddah. We started a couple of years ago with them. And when we concluded the project, the first phase, they said the most important takeaway out of this project was the mindset transformation. And then that was the aha moment for us to stress on the fact that this is the necessary part today to invest on, which is the mindset transformation. Because without that, you will have everything. You have the blueprint, you have the manuals, you have the roadmap, etc. But you will lose your compass when you start navigating where your true North Star is. So I think that is the most important part. Another part is just to help the young entrepreneurs to step up and adopt into the business terminologies, the business acumen, and just to build this strong foundation of how a true entrepreneur may shine. I think these are the most important, and for me, it's like the self-satisfying takeaways that we keep on taking out from any engagement or intervention with our clients. And I think I encourage myself, my colleagues, and even anyone who are involved in this manner to participate through the mindset transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, businesses are, of course, made up of people. And so the human mindset is what really drives the business forward, especially when there are so many changes happening. I think one question I might have is just that I'm sure whatever you are doing in Saudi right now, especially if you're an existing business owner, it might be a little bit overwhelming. There's just so much new information coming in. You're not sure exactly how to deal with it, whether it's opening up to the rest of the world or just new regulations, et cetera. How do you help these business owners move from information overload to actually taking action and being clear about what their next steps are, how they're going to actually act on them?
Well, Nick, I think this is the $1 million question. And it's extremely important. Again, it's a little bit related to the mindset, and it's more related to how we engage with the clients. Most of the people are looking for a plan, a strategic plan. And the term itself, the strategic plan, is just a messed up term. There is no such a thing called a strategic plan. There is a plan and there is a strategy. But the strategic plan, this is something people just invented. I don't know why. And why I'm saying so. I have a client in Mecca who is related with Hajj, the pilgrim. And that is the most appreciated event that even Saudi is investing billions to make it successful. And this started since the dawn of even before Islam, like maybe 2000 or even more than 2000 years ago. So the idea came from a benchmark where the client asked me, we want to benchmark against a cost of a certain service. And I said, it's impossible. It's not running away from the benchmark itself, but it is impossible because if we have just 15 variables, okay, and those 15 variables are directly related to the costing exercise. If you put it in a simulation, you will see a mess. You will see ups and downs and then ups and downs and then ups and downs. So instead of that, we developed a model where they become a little bit closer to the market rather than being enclosed to themselves and just wait to see how the market reacts. Through that exercise, we ought to go to a blue ocean where they are different compared to the other competitors. And I think throughout reading the emerging market in Saudi Arabia, we're going to have hundreds of blue ocean companies because everyone want to be differentiated, not for the sake of being differentiated, but the sake of being protected. If I am differentiated, then I don't have to do a benchmark against who you are in terms of how much you offer your services or products and the other way around. And they were convinced, and now we are in a testing phase. We want to see the results because we created our own market with our own specifications and with our own cost and pricing structure. Again, this leads us to it's impossible to comprehend the overflow of information and variables happening not in the world, but even in the region. And sometimes not, I want to go into a micro level where I can freely say in just a small sector, you cannot predict what will happen tomorrow. The global changes is impacting everyone. And before it was just impactful at a country level, but now even it's impactful at a grocery level. So again, defining how we're going to do the business is going to be radically transformed, I think, in the coming 2 or 3 years from today.
Yeah, I just got to say, it's probably the biggest, most exciting place for MBAs to ever be. I would say, I don't think there's ever been anything like this before, where there's just so much opportunity for innovation and business model changes. So very, very exciting. When it comes to Vision 2030, or maybe your own personal vision for Saudi Arabia, I was wondering, what would success look like to you? What would be the ideal outcome for culture, infrastructure, everything? What's the vision that you see that would make you most excited to know that that was where your country is going?
Well, quite frankly, at a higher level, the Vision 2030 is based on 3 pillars: a vibrant society, a thriving community. But for me, the success key indicator, when we become as vibrant as possible, when we open up into culture, okay, 5-6 years ago, before the initiatives of the Ministry of Culture, culture was defined according to individual perspectives. But today, there is a kind of a collective definition of what culture is and how you live and how you enjoy culture. You know, for example, an artist, it's not necessary that you produce art. The moment you taste art and you live art, I think that's, for me, the success key indicator. And I think we have fast-paced at a software level compared to the hardware level. The impact of the hardware that emerging or resulting from the Vision 2030, it can be seen with a huge magnitude at a software level. So we are changing, and that's, for me, is the true transformation, and it's the realization of our vision.
Amazing. And speaking of art, Dr. Habis has his own podcast on Arabic calligraphy. I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit and talk about why you started the podcast, why you think it's important to share that with the world.
Okay, that is really funny because my handwriting is awful. And we used to study calligraphy when we were at elementary school. And it was awful. It was the most torturing topic that I get myself involved into. But ironically, what happened, a few of my partners, they are highly certified and they are well known in the calligraphy industry. And also, ironically, the calligraphy is merged from this land. And it went out to the world while we lost our legacy. So we want to stress on the fact that the calligraphy came from this land and it belongs to this land. Of course, everyone has to enjoy it, but we have to put things where it's supposed to be put. The calligraphy, the Arabic calligraphy, is initiated from this country. And we say this is the core of the Saudi and the Arabic art. And since we are investing heavily in that spectrum, we said we're going to host podcasts just to showcase what Arabic calligraphy is, what the Saudi initiatives are taking place. For example, the Center of Prince Mohammed bin Salman that is dedicated for just promoting who we are and what the Arabic calligraphy is and how we are linked to each other. So from that sense, we thought this is a really niche topic that nobody is, quite honestly, investing on. So we want to be the first party to participate and promote this element.
So cool. I think that very well shows what you were talking about, preserving the culture, but also bringing it into modernity. And very cool that you do that. Just so the listeners can look it up if they're interested, what would be the way that they can find it? What's the name of the podcast? What are the platforms that it's on?
Yeah, quite honestly, it's not yet released, but you are the first who gonna know when, how, who's gonna speak, etc. So all the information is gonna be shared very, very soon.
Sure. We'll link to that later in the future then. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about that we didn't cover?
Well, just one thing. No words can explain or express our gratitude of what is happening today. Quite honestly, for myself, as a person who was born in 77, so we missed a lot of the enjoyment that the youngsters are living today. So I'm not saying I'm jealous, but I'm saying to every single one of those, just be appreciative and just be a good citizen, as good as possible, because we are literally living a dream. I can't imagine how this country may look like in just 5-6 years down the road. Especially now we're hosting the Soccer World Cup and a lot of other events are coming up. I also invite everyone just to come and taste the flavor of this beautiful country. And lastly, thank you very much for allowing me to be with you. And I hope we just touch base on a few high level of the beauty of what's going on here in Saudi.
Yeah, very exciting times ahead. Thank you so much for joining, Dr. Amr Habis. And would love to have you on again. I think, as you said, high level stuff we touched on, but I'm sure there's a lot more that we can talk about again in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the INSEAD Emerging Markets Podcast. To stay up to date on events we may be hosting, emerging market news, and to build your personal network, please feel free to join the INSEAD Alumni Emerging Markets Interest Group on LinkedIn.